I know I've told this story before, but I have a bit of history with this particular game. I was pretty young, 6 or 7. Actually, sorry, 5 or 6, wrong range. And I set up a little stand of just me sitting at the steps of this local library. When I say local library, this was a huge library, multi-tiered, gargantuan building. It was built on a hill, had a huge park, so it had a lot of foot traffic. And it also happened to be in walking distance of me. So I went there, I had a bunch of cardboard stock, and I had cut them up, and I'd used all of the stuff I had, all the colored pencils, all the paint, all the markers, and I just designed all kinds of different bookmarks of a huge variety of different things. You know, cute stuff, cool stuff, fancy stuff, terrain stuff, whatever, right? And I just sat there and I'd sell them for $0.25. Now, I didn't actually realize this until this morning when I was getting ready for this whole thing, that this was probably the original run. You know how nowadays you donate money to me and that's how these runs happen? Well, obviously people were putting quarters to this, but every now and again someone would just give me $1 or $5, just because they thought it was cute what I was doing or they wanted to support me. Sound familiar? And they put that all together, and then I suffered through 7 hours of tedium, 6 hours of tedium and boredom at my dad's work the next day. And by the next day, I mean, this was like a multi-day project. It was like about a week. So next week, come Monday, I go in with my dad to work. Now, you're probably thinking, why? Well, because my dad's work was within walking distance. It was about a half an hour walk there and half an hour walk back of the local toy store, which sold video games. I admit, with the advantage of hindsight, it feels weird to admit that I went ahead and just kind of walked across town, a not insubstantial walk at that age with just a jar of money, but whatever. And I bought this exact copy of the game. This is my original copy that I bought, and this is also the first video game I've ever purchased with my own money. And those of you who've been paying attention to my little stories know that after a while my mother forced me to sell my NES collection, and there were 4 games I kept, and this was one of them. I wasn't losing my Mario 3. I also kept the booklet. A little manual. It's not a great manual, but I have some fond memories of it, mostly because for those 6 or so hours I was waiting at my dad's work, this was what I had to read. So I kind of read it to death. But the other thing, of course, and I was showing this off earlier, was the Nintendo Power Strategy Guide. You could see just how dog-eared this poor thing is. I was showing it off during the stream a little bit too. I have read this a lot, and I am very, very cautious with this now. This is a fantastic guide. If you somehow have the opportunity to get a hold of it, I recommend it. This is exactly what a guide should be in just about every respect. But of course, this doesn't have anything to do with the game itself. I just kind of wanted to share it because I'm a weird dork like that. After making Mario Bros. The Lost Levels, they already started working on Mario Bros. 3. Now, he had worked on games before, but let's be honest, this is Miyamoto's first game. His first game where he was given the reins and kind of let off the chain. Just do whatever. Do whatever you want to do. And he fully directed, produced, and was the team leader for this one, and by God, it shows. For all the disagreements I have with that man, of which there are many, I will never disagree with his approach to style. One of the things he did was he said, hey, don't be ashamed to come up with an idea. Don't think, that's stupid. Bring it to the table. Bring it to the rest of us. We'll workshop it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But at the very least, bring it forward so we can discuss it and consider it. And a lot of innovation and a lot of designs and enemy and platforming and literally pushing the NES hardware in ways that it otherwise couldn't have done was all done because of this approach and this philosophy. He also had a fairly large team, about 30 people, as opposed to the 8 who made Super Mario Bros. 1 for comparison. Except for poor Koji Kondo, he was still doing all of the music and sound by himself. Poor guy. I shouldn't say sound. I'm not actually 100% about it. I read something that said it was just sound, but I didn't follow through on this. Let me walk that back. I know he was the only one working on the music. And like most of us creative types, he took a lot of the feedback a little bit personally. He was like, oh man, it's a great soundtrack, but it all sounds like the same genre. And so he tried really hard to make each of the songs in this sound like they came from a different genre. Poor Koji Kondo. Obviously, this game had, I could tell you other stuff. I could tell you how it was supposed to be isometric originally. I could tell you how id Software was interested in the game, not only because they're gaming geeks, but because of the fact that they wanted the challenge of trying to port this to the PC, and they actually made a workable demo, which they showcased to Nintendo, and Nintendo said, nah. And id was like, well, that sucks. And they went on to make Commander Keen with that exact same demo. I could tell you about how they tried to make the game do the diagonal scrolling is actually what I want to call that. The ability to scroll with the player in any direction, which was a pretty new thing at the time. I can tell you about a bunch of other stuff, but the thing I really want to talk to you about is the financial side of things, because Mario 3 was always going to sell well. It sat on the backs of Mario 1 and Mario 2, both of which were smash hits, at a time in which gaming was effectively penduluming back to being useful. We had the crash, and we were still reacting to the crash, but one of those reactions, one of those results of the crash, was people going right back into it once they saw good games. That was, remember, one of the core problems with the crash was how much drivel and dreck and deliberately misleading games were out there. So you see something, you see this, this is a quality product. Why do you think they had the Nintendo seal of approval as a regular thing? That's why that was a thing. So this sucker came out, and it was always going to sell well. But it had an interesting foible going for it. Because Mario 3 came out relatively soon in Japan. In fact, while they had a long development time, remember, they were working on this game even while they were working on Doki Doki. As in Doki Doki, not Super Mario Bros. 2. They were working on Super Mario Bros. 2 at the same time, too. I already talked about that. But they were working on this game for a while. And then they ran into a bit of a chip shortage. And they made a very smart decision. They said, well, we could print what copies we have now and have a shortage problem just like we had with Mario Bros. 2, or we can wait until we can print as many copies as we think we're going to sell. They waited. Now, that was probably a good answer for multiple reasons, but the biggest reason is because there was this company called Universal, which actually had some issues with Nintendo in the past, which they were now desperately trying to cover up because Nintendo was making a lot of money. And so Universal said, hey, we want to promote your stuff. We want to promote you. We want to promote you in this new film we're working on called The Wizard. Now, I'm sure most of you have seen The Wizard and the hilarious inaccuracies of that film. But the point is, The Wizard was kind of a marketing slam dunk. Even if you didn't actually go see the film, I actually saw it in theaters myself, but even if you didn't actually go see the film, it was pretty overt and obvious, and it was hitting demographics that video game advertisements usually didn't. And then they had the golden ticket. Now, I've talked about this before, and I've already shown this off. Any game that got a nice big showcase in Nintendo Power has a tendency to sell. That's pretty universally true for a large number of video games, up at least until the SNES era. So they had the Nintendo Power thing for the actual video game enthusiasts. They had the fact that it was Mario Bros. 3 for the people who were already into Super Mario Bros. They had the fact that it's got a lot of marketing weight behind it for people who are into video games in general. And, of course, they had the Wizard, which was pushing it even further. So, yeah, this game was always going to absolutely destroy records. In my opinion, this is the best-selling NES game of all time. And I know that sounds like a weird way to say that, because you're like, how is it a statistic and opinion? Well, anybody who knows statistics will tell you how you interpret those statistics matters. Because Duck Hunt has sold better than this game, technically speaking, because of the bundle. It was bundled with the NES, right? I don't think that counts. Mario Bros. 1 might count, but I don't think it does either. So if we discount the bundles, Super Mario Bros. 3 is the best-selling NES game of all time, as it should be. Either way, this game is super-duper awesome. But what's really funny is how awesome is it really? No, really. Let's remove nostalgia for a second. It's okay to enjoy something for nostalgia's sake, as I often say. But if we actually remove nostalgia, how good is the game? This was my worry. This was my fear walking into this. Because Mario Bros. 3 is often considered the golden child, not just of the Mario games or platformers, but of video gaming. This is a game that most people consider to be one of the best games of all time. If you ever look up a list of most significant games or most popular games or best video games, Mario 3 is usually somewhere towards the top of that list. Not always, but usually. So how good is the game really? And I just gave away my own story. Obviously, this is of personal significance to me, too. So, was I just worried about the fact that it was just nostalgia? Well, no. The reason I was worried is I actually replayed this game a few years ago on stream. It was just a random stream. This was before we actually codified the runs method that we do now. We were just playing Mario Brothers for the heck of it. I think it was in preparation for Odyssey, now that I'm thinking about it. And we were having some issues. Now, this time through, anybody who watched could tell you that I actually played substantially better than before, probably because, as I've said before, years of practice have actually been getting me better at video gaming. But I kept staying on brand. And you're probably wondering, what's the brand, Laura? Well, for those of you who don't watch the streams, the brand is, if I have a really difficult boss or a really difficult puzzle or a really difficult level, smash through it first try. If I have an easy level, I die to it 15 times in a row. And that's exactly what happened here. It's like, okay, I've got this extremely hard dungeon, and I'm done. I think, okay, I've got this super difficult trick, and I'm done. Okay, and now I've got this one random airship. Dead. But the thing is, Mario Bros. 3, in my opinion, is more significant than it is good. It's still good. I think our golden number for it was like 40, which is very good. That's anything above 0 is, of course, good. We've talked about that before. Anything above 100 is the best games ever made. So you can kind of have a range there. Like, I think the best golden score we've given out is like 130. Hang on, I'm actually look that up really quick because I just have it right here. I was just looking at the spreadsheet. If you'll give me a moment. Yep, it's 137 is the highest score we've ever given. So that's your range, right? So 40 may not sound impressive when you compare it against all of video gaming ever. And that's because it totally is impressive. I have no idea why you think that's not impressive. That's insane. And almost all of it sits on the value of its level approach. So there's some cool power-ups in this. You know, you got the leaf, which gives you a little bit of control as you're coming down. You've got the fire flower, which is your classic. Of course, your mushroom, which is your classic. Your star, which lasts a little bit shorter, but that's okay, because there's a lot more stuff you can interact with, and it helps with several levels. In fact, several levels are designed around the star when we get to World 7. And then we have the Tanuki suit, which is the leaf, but you also have the statue, which not only can you use to avoid enemies, but you can use to land on enemies and kill enemies you otherwise shouldn't be able to. We've got the Hammer Brothers suit, which is the best power-up in the universe, and then we've got the Frog suit, which is neat, but ultimately kind of crap. And that's our lot. I'm skipping over a couple things, but that's our lot. Not super great. Okay. Still good. All right, well, what else have we got? Well, we've got a unique approach to itemization. In fact, let's call it what it is. The inventory in this game is surprisingly good. Because what happens is there's mushroom houses and encounters and mini-games, all three of which you can do on the overworld map, right? As you interact with these things in the overworld map and the routing thereof, you can get items and lives. Lives are obvious. The items go into your inventory. You can burn an item prior to walking into a stage, and it gives you that power-up. You are now a leaf or a star or whatever, right? This seemingly small change is actually critically important and brilliantly designed. I gave a full 3 positives for this. Because the way this ends up working is, first of all, and most importantly of all, it is totally optional. You don't have to get those extra power-ups. You don't have to use those extra power-ups. But what it offers you is a choice of how you approach the levels. So if you look at this stage and you're having trouble with it, you can burn a specific power-up to walk into the stage with the power-up. Maybe you don't have a leaf, but you happen to know that that block will give you a leaf if you're already big. So you can burn a flower or burn a mushroom to get a leaf. You have the really nice power-ups like the Juggum's Cloud to completely skip a stage, or the P-Wing to, well, let's call it what it is, skip a stage. And all of this stuff is just there as an option. There's a couple of things that are slightly less useful, like the music box, which, I mean, is just kind of a who cares. Or the anchor, which, well, the anchor isn't useless. Because what the anchor does is it makes it so the airship can't run away if you fail to defeat it in one try. The reason I say it's not completely useless is because of the map design. Now, overworld design is something I'm very critical of, mostly because of the RPGs I've covered over the years. But overworld design applies here as well. Just because we can't move around freely doesn't mean this isn't an overworld. It's actually one step below an overworld in terms of design, but it is still effectively an overworld. So the fact that, and they show this off in the very first world. What do you see? There's one up there. Yeah, let me do it from here. There's one up here. And there's 1-2. And then you could just go down to the fortress. You could skip 1-3 and 1-4. No problems. You could also do 1-3 or 1-4, and both of them give you access to the mushroom. Or you can do both in order, if you just are doing all the stages like we were doing. All of these things are options that are in here, and it's minor stuff, but it gets more the further into the game you get, all the way up to World 7. There's multiple paths and multiple options and multiple shortcuts you can unlock, because let's say you defeat the fortress, but then you game over. Well, that lock and key that the fortress was making there, that's gone now on the continue. So you've effectively mid-mission checkpointed your way through the world, which is good because this game has absolutely no save feature whatsoever, which kind of sucks if I'm being honest. But anyways, So you have all this wonderful stuff you can do to how to navigate through. And that's why the anchor can be useful, because one of the things that's not an uncommon tactic is, rather than doing every stage, to do a specific route through the stages, which means certain areas might be locked out for you. So you don't want the ship to move behind them, because the ship is programmed to move to places which are likely to be locked behind stages you didn't do, because it's obvious. They know the spots where you might not have done. Now it's random. Sometimes the airship won't even move. It'll be like, and it'll just stand in the same spot. But either way, that's good overworld design, good item design, and great inventory design. This is on top of the fact that the game kind of has lots and lots of options for 1-ups and for power-ups. Now you're thinking, Lord, you just like easy games and you're stupid and you're dumb and I hate you and your face is so ugly. And now that's all true, especially the face part. It's hurtful, but it's true. But the real problem there is that that's stupid. Because the thing that I like about this is it once again does what a lot of games do properly. It puts the difficulty in your hands. It tells you, here is all these options to go through this game. Now, we're going to make these stages kind of hard. We're going to be kind of mean about them, especially from World 3 onwards. World 1 and 2 are both easy mode. World 1 is entirely a tutorial world, and it does a wonderful job of tutorializing almost every major mechanic you need to know. From then on, any other gimmick is tutorialized within the stage it shows up. World 2, it's a little bit of an escalation, but it is still just an escalation. World 3 is when the difficulty cranks up. And then it goes right back down for World 4, which is always confusing. And then it goes right back up for 5, and 6, and 7, and 8. Each successive world getting harder and harder. This is actually something they did on purpose. I was reading an interview about this just this morning, where they wanted to make the level designs as hard as they could, like in Lost Levels, but give tools to the player to be able to bypass that difficulty if they wanted to. And I like that kind of design. I think that's smart, in my opinion. How many of you remember that Mario Bros. 3 is actually kind of a hard game? I mean, sure, it's not exactly the hardest Mario game, but think about some of the levels. Think about the lava fortress in World 7, for example. Or think about the section where you have to do the diagonal jumps, and if you miss any jump once, you're dead. And there's the fire snakes following around while you do it. I can name other examples, but I'm sure you could think of some too. How about the first actual stage in World 8? World 8-1, after you go through all that nonsense? That's a fun one. Most people think, oh, thank goodness. No, that's actually harder than most of the previous stages. And that's never mind the fact that that comes right after the fast airship fleet too. Mario 3 is perfectly wonderful in its difficulty, and I do like that. And I like the fact that if I go through all my lives, it's not the end of the world, because there's infinite continues, something they fixed from Super Mario Bros. 2. But all of this just makes this a good game. What actually pushes it forward, and the reason it's so significant, is because of the fact that they really tried stuff. There's a lot of gimmicks that only show up for 1, or in some cases 2 levels. Everyone remembers the Angry Sun, right? How many stages does that show up in? One of which is actually optional if you approach it a certain way. That's it. They were like, okay, let's do a sun for this level. Let's do a shoe for this level. Let's do these kind of, one of my favorites, World 7 really starts to vary things up. World 7 and World 5 both are wonderful in their approach. How many of you actually have noticed the recurrent themes in World 5 before? And I don't mean that as an insult, because it's just built right into the level design, which I love. In World 5, you start off down on the ground. It's like, okay, that's cool. And every stage, to some extent or another, is about going up and down. It's all about the climbing mechanic. First you have the big old pyramid thing you have to go over. Then you have the level where you can either fall all the way down or climb all the way up. Both are valid exits, because this game loves to have multiple paths for its levels, which is another excellent aspect of level design, by the way. And then you have the final tower, the spiral tower, where you go all the way up and up. And it's so visibly obvious that you're going up. And then you come out and you're in the clouds looking down. And that's when the second gimmick, the second theme shows up, which is being up in the clouds. Lots of lots of drops, lots of moving platforms. We've got the spinny things, we've got the buzzy beetles, etc. But all of this is excellent. And I cannot be the only person who, when I was a kid and emerged from the spiral tower, was like, oh my God. And you could see the world down below you. That also adds a wonderful nature of continuity to the game. Each level, feels like it fits within its world, which I know you'd think, duh. But this was something that was still kind of new in its own right, and something that most games didn't really execute in the same manner. Frankly, there are later games, even on the SNES and later consoles, that don't execute the theme approach to level design the same way that this game does. Not just in a narrative sense, in terms of the visuals and the presentation, but also in the gimmick sense of what kind of encounters you're going to go through. Which, of course, brings me to World 7, the pipe world. It's one of the first stages we see. Well, here's this vertical thing. Oh, it wraps. And we've got those little platforms that rise up as you're standing on them. They go away if you hit another one. You can only have one up at a time. But they stay there for a bit, and they last for a bit, and you have to kind of maneuver your way up through this section as you're going through it, and it's awesome. And that's what I have to say about this game. There's so many gimmicks. That is what really raises this game up. The unfortunate thing, which is also in the game's favor, is most of the stages are very short. Now, you can probably tell, I'm being cautious because this is so dog-eared, I really don't want to rip this on camera. You can kind of see just exactly how short most of these stages are, because most of them just fit on this 2-page spread. But that's to the game's benefit, because no stage really outstays its welcome. There are, I think, 3 stages throughout the game which are built around the stage being long. And most of them are maze stages where you have to navigate and find the route through, like the one in World 7, or there's a fortress one in 6, I believe, which does that, and you get the idea. There's also the fortress in 8, which does the same concept. And all of them have this idea of trying to find the way through, and the timer's ticking down, and oh god, what do we do? The downside of this is these stages are so small that I only gave a plus to a single stage. Just one. It was in World 7. It was the aforementioned puzzle platformy one that I just talked about, where you get on the platforms and they slowly hover up, and you got to go through the pipes and wrap your way around. It's just a very, very clever, very, very well executed stage. Most of the other stages are just good. And then you're done with it. And then you have another good stage, and then you're done with it, and another good stage, and you're done with it. So while it works for the game's overall benefit, it could have been better if each stage was fleshed out more. Except that's with the advantage of now speaking. Something like a Shovel Knight or a more modern Mega Man could look at this and say, oh yeah, or even more modern Mario games can take individual levels and really polish those individual levels to perfection. Here, they were doing exactly what Miyamoto was saying to do, trying stuff. And they did. They threw out a gimmick. There's a stage where the entire gimmick of the stage is just, there's a big side and there's a small side. It's just a straight platformer. There's no difficult jumps, there's no difficult enemy placements. It's just they wanted to try and see what they could do with that. And this, of course, became the inspiration for Big Little Island in Mario 64 later. And that's what I love about this game. While it doesn't score as well as some other games because it's not as good as some other games, I will ever and always give credit to Mario 3 for trying. And for being, well, such a significant game when it comes to gaming history in general. I think this is one of the more important ones when it comes to gaming design. Because I think that this proved that this kind of thing could work. My opinion. I am as ever curious of yours. Oh, and just for fun, what's your favorite song from Mario 3? Mine's the song that plays when you fight Bowser himself. Because, I don't know about you, but I love what they did with the last dungeon. I guess I could talk about that really quick here. The last dungeon is... So, okay, let's rewind a second. Each of the worlds, except for 8, has multiple paths through it. World 8 does not. World 8 is very linear. You go through it, and then you're done. However, the only thing that's optional in World 8 is either the shortcuts, if you die, or whether or not you get the hand levels, which, shrug. I showed off all of them anyways, because we were doing an all stages run through, because it's a review. But regardless, the last stage takes all of those design concepts and runs with them. First of all, we get a tutorialization on one last gimmick, the laser. Second of all, there are multiple paths through Bowser's Castle. It's a fairly large stage, relatively speaking. And I think it's actually the largest stage in the game, technically. And so you can go up here, which goes straight to the end, or you can go through here, which goes to this lower section, or you go all the way down. And it's designed such, so there's this big lava room, and a bunch of donut blocks which fall if you stand on them for too long. And the higher up you get, the shorter the stage is, rewarding you for managing the most difficult jumps that exist here. The thing is, you're not really punished per se, because you can still progress. It's just if you miss a jump, there's something to catch you, and then you go through the lower area, and that pushes you through another path. And so we go through all these different paths until we reach Bowser. And I've said this, I think Final Fantasy IV is the first game I really talked about this on, years and years ago. But I've always said that a final boss should be something different. Ideally, that's the ideal we want to reach for. And I think that the Bowser fight here absolutely manages that, because it's a completely unique fight. No other thing in the entire game uses the mechanic of trying to smash through the blocks and then get through it. We've got a unique song, and we've got a great, tile set, different appearance for the fire and different appearance for him. Everything about this encounter is completely unique and interesting and fun. And of course, I don't know about you, but I had a lot of fun fighting this guy back in the day. And of course, this is why he's such a vertical fighter in Smash. So... And then we had a surprisingly good ending. This is something I've praised before. Mega Man 2, this came up as well. There's nothing wrong with a simple ending, as long as it's executed well. And I think this is a good example of that. We just have a nice ending theme. We have a brief showcasing of each of the worlds, with some unique sprites and artwork to kind of showcase them, and then the curtain falls, the end. And that's all it needs to be. I still love this game. To be blunt, it actually reviewed much better than I thought it would. Now I'm just nervous about tomorrow, because tomorrow we cover World. I hope you've enjoyed my thoughts, and as ever, I look forward to yours. See you next time.